Good morning, and thank you for joining us for All Things Heart. I'm Alexis Del Cid. We are working hard to bring you some pretty incredible shows this coming fall. Until then, we'll be sharing some encore presentations of our favorite episodes every Thursday morning at 10 a.m. all summer long. So sit back and enjoy this best of All Things Heart.
From the University of Kansas Health System.
I am amazed. The team here is great.
I came on a Tuesday, and then by Saturday I had a heart in me.
I have never seen a group of people work together so good as this team of heart specialists. I mean, it's just unreal.
Stand by to set up show.
And the Dolph C. Simons Jr. Family Broadcast Studio.
Roll it.
Always makes you feel like you're the most important patient on the planet.
I felt heard, and that was really big.
This is All Things Heart.
Good morning. It is Thursday, April 21st. I'm Alexis Del Cid. Welcome to All Things Heart. Here's what we're talking about today. Fitness trackers. They let you track your body like never before. We will show you how a Kansas City man's fitness tracker helped doctors figure out the best way to treat him for a life-threatening heart condition. Behind the mask, what do our doctors do when they're not saving lives? See the impressive way cardiologist Dr. Seth Sheldon spends his time. You will be blown away. And golfology for cardiology. 18 holes is always great for your heart, and supporting this round is even better because of who else it will help. And as always, if you have a question or a comment, you can share those on our Facebook or our YouTube channel, or email us at allthingsheart@kumc.edu. What a time to be alive. We're living in an incredible era of technology, more specifically, wearable life-saving technology. And you're about to meet a man whose watch had a huge impact on how doctors treated a life-threatening heart condition, because it became a powerful source of information when those doctors needed to move quickly.
One thing is clear from the moment we step into Jeff and Jill Barnthouse's Overland Park home. This is a house filled with action and love.
Sweet. Oh, okay. All right.
So if we want to talk to Jeff and his wife about the scary event,
oh my God, I was so scared.
and the thing on Jeff's wrist that helped doctors decide they needed to quickly perform a life-saving heart procedure, we need to somehow coax two of the cutest toddlers you'll ever see into briefly sharing their daddy with us.
2021. Okay. Okay.
It was a typical Saturday a year ago when Jeff says he hopped on their new Peloton bike just to get a feel for the pedals. A few minutes later, he remembers asking Jill for water. Jill says she left the room for 20 seconds, came back, and Jeff was on the ground. He'd passed out and fallen off the bike.
He had the look in his eyes that I don't ever want to see again. Like they were open, but he was not there.
The next thing Jeff remembers is his eyes focusing and seeing the worried little face of his sweet son.
Said the first thing I saw when I came to was Ben.
What was he doing?
He was just standing there, kind of looking down at me. But yeah, it was scary. But Dr. Sheldon really put a plan in place that helped a lot. Yeah, it was. I'm just very thankful.
Jeff was rushed to the ER. He didn't know it at the time, but the doctors there would make some crucial decisions based on the treasure trove of information contained in Jeff's smartwatch. It would directly impact the course of action they took, including making Jeff a priority patient and performing a cardiac ablation on him shortly afterwards.
Daddy.
A life-saving device, a life-changing event, reinforcing for Jeff that the only things that really matter in this whole world are right here in this house with him.
This morning, we are so happy to be joined by Jeff Barnthouse virtually, along with cardiologist and electrophysiologist Dr. Seth Sheldon. You made the decision to do the cardiac ablation. We're going to get to what that is in a moment. But first, Jeff, I think we were all hoping you'd be at home today so we could see your cute little kids again.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Yeah, feel really good. Happy to be joining you guys today.
Oh, so are we. I want to ask Dr. Sheldon, right out of the gate, what exactly was wrong with Jeff's heart?
Yeah, so great question. Great video, by the way, Jeff. It's so wonderful to see you in your home. And
yeah.
He had a condition called atrial fibrillation. And this is basically an abnormal rhythm in the top chambers of the heart that causes a chaotic, random activity. And it's very unusual to have happen in somebody as young as Jeff, obviously.
We have some pictures demonstrating Afib that you shared with us. So that's what was happening in Jeff's heart?
Yeah, so there's this chaotic random activity going on in the top chamber of the heart. In this video here, we can see when the top chambers aren't contracting and blood is sitting there, it can form a clot.
Ooh.
And this is one of the biggest things we worry about with this rhythm is the risk for stroke. And so if the clot breaks off and goes to the brain, it could end up causing a stroke. Unfortunately, that's not how Jeff's presented.
Right.
He presented as having symptoms with the abnormal rhythm, which is another common issue with it.
And you also talk about him having a flutter, Afib, a flutter. What's a flutter? And is this common for a guy as young as Jeff? Jeff, you're 35 now, right?
That's right. Yep, 35.
So you were 32 at the time?
34, I guess.
34.
Yeah,
so that was
young.
young.
Yes.
Yeah.
Super young to have this condition. So specifically regarding atrial fibrillation and atrial flutter, these are kind of cousin rhythm issues, and oftentimes they go together. So if we take all patients with atrial flutter, 50% of them will go on to have atrial fibrillation within the next few years afterwards.
Is it normal for a guy like Jeff that
no,
presents?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
So Jeff has what's considered lone atrial fibrillation, which means he has atrial fibrillation in the absence of conditions that would trigger atrial fibrillation. It's more common to happen in people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and so on that have high blood pressure or overweight or drink more alcohol. And he really had atrial fibrillation in the absence of these things.
Jeff, do you know now, looking back, the signs that you had put off as just being a new dad to two little ones? Can you now look back and think, okay, that was what was happening? And what were those signs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, things like going out to shovel the driveway and being short of breath after, a couple minutes of doing that was obviously a sign that I just thought was me being a little out of shape. And you're exactly right, having two little kids and maybe not hitting the gym as much as I used to. Things like, just working out and feeling a little short of breath or lightheaded. Those were definitely things that I just, at the time, didn't think were that big a deal, but obviously looking back on were very obvious signs.
Dr. Sheldon performed a cardio ablation. What is that?
Yeah, so it's a procedure where we go through the blood vessels in the leg and gain access to the inner aspect of the heart. And when we do that, we can map the abnormal signals within the heart. So this video that looks like it's shows some of the equipment that we use for an ablation.
So you put that up his leg?
We go through the leg, and this has multiple electrodes on it and lets us create an electrical map of the heart as well as an anatomic shell to know where we've been within the heart and know in 3 dimensions how to move the catheters within the heart as well.
Wow. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, it's really
and to
cool
be able to do that.
Help with these.
I want to get to the smartwatch component. Because as we're talking about how this smartwatch played a role in the types of treatment you did, what did you see on the smartwatch once Jeff arrived in the ER?
Yeah, so Jeff had originally presented with atrial fibrillation, and he was started on a medication to help keep him in rhythm. And this medication can also organize the abnormal rhythm of atrial fibrillation to atrial flutter. And so when he came into the emergency room, he demonstrated that he'd organized to this abnormal rhythm called atrial flutter.
Okay.
And in some ways you could consider this is more organized and more treatable, but on the other end, in somebody that's young like him, it can make the circuit in the top chambers go really fast, like 240, 260 beats a minute on medications. And he's young enough and his conduction system is fast enough that it let the bottom chambers go that quickly. And when your heart's going that quick, it doesn't have time to fill. And so
is that why he passed out?
That's probably why he passed out with the event.
So was what you saw on Jeff's smartwatch what enabled you to make him what was called a priority patient?
Yes. So this abnormal rhythm that he developed is something that can happen with this particular medication that we utilized. And we use another medication to slow down the AV node so that ideally someone doesn't go this fast. But having this added information early on in the treatment process, we knew that using this medication would not be an effective way to treat him long term. And and we didn't want him going home and not being able to do the things he needed to do with his family and play with his kids and do things. So we decided to make it a priority situation and expedite the ablation procedure for him.
So Jeff, when your wife and your family rushed you to the ER, did you say, hey, check my watch? Or was it one of the doctors that said, let me check your watch?
Yeah, no, so we actually looked at my watch when we were at home. I kind of, came to and didn't really know what was going on. And my wife is in the medical field, and she thought to check it right away. And that showed her, very quickly what had happened. And then when we got to the hospital, we were able to, basically pass on that information and say, here's what we see. What do you guys, how do you interpret this? Because obviously I know that that's probably not great, but don't really know what that exactly means. And Dr. Sheldon and everyone else in the emergency room was able to use that information to put a plan in place moving forward.
It's incredible. So many people are wearing smartwatches right now.
Yes.
And they're wondering, one, what do I look for? Two, what do I do if I see something out of the ordinary? So I guess I'll start with this, Dr. Sheldon. If you're considering getting a smartwatch or a fitness tracker, what kind of features should you be monitoring every day? Just the typical healthy person, because Jeff thought he was a typical healthy person.
Yeah, so there's a wide variability in the types of smartwatches that are available today. The most common type of watch that's keeping an eye on your heart would be one that's looking at your heart rate.
Okay.
So it uses this term called plethosmography to look at the pulse that's happening through your wrist.
Plethosmography?
Yes.
Does it
Don't ask me to spell that, of course.
Does it say that? Like, track my plethosmography?
No,
like,
it'll say track your heart rate or pulse, probably.
Okay, all right.
But anyways, it's basically looking at the blood flow through your wrist. And in doing so, it's able to calculate what your heart rate is. And so that's kind of on the simpler end of things. What is even more helpful to me is knowing what the heart is electrically doing. And that's happened with some of the more modern versions that several of the companies offer, including the Apple Watch that Jeff wore.
And what's that feature called that tracks what it's electrically?
It's called an electrocardiogram, or ECG or EKG is what it's the acronym for it.
That was one of our viewer questions from Kathy. Said, should your watch check your EKG?
Yeah, so most watches are not going to be checking the EKG continuously like they are the heart rate. But when you tell it, I'm having symptoms or something's going on and I want to check an EKG, you can bring a second finger to the watch, which creates a path through the heart when it's between your arms and creates an electrical signal that the watch detects and can record an EKG. So for my patients that have known electrical heart rhythm problems, it's helpful for me to get an EKG once a day on those patients, and it'll analyze it and say, normal rhythm or inconclusive rhythm or maybe atrial fibrillation. And then I can sometimes take a look at that if there's something that's concerning and see what it looks like and confirm what's going on in their heart.
So if someone's looking at their fitness tracker or their watch right now and they see something that looks irregular, who do they call in this moment?
So oftentimes it depends on what they're feeling, and it isn't necessarily an emergency. There's lots of things that can be picked up as an irregular rhythm. More commonly, we see false positives, to tell you the truth. So extra heartbeats that happen or artifact that's picking up from not having an accurate tracing. But occasionally, as in Jeff's case, we see something that's truly concerning, and that early detection can really help improve outcomes too.
I want to play something for you, Dr. Sheldon, that Jeff's wife, Jill, said. I asked her, what do you most want to say to the doctor? And here's what Jill said.
I think that Dr. Sheldon is so thorough. I think he did everything to make sure that Jeff was taken care of, not just, as a patient, but as a person. And I think that's hard for a lot of medical people, is to not make him a number, but make him like an actual individual. Like, he treated him as, this is a young guy who has a family. Like, he needs to get back to his normal life.
That's such a sweet thing.
Such a nice message. And, we try to do that for all our patients, obviously. They're here. Yes, they have a medical condition, but they've got their life outside of the hospital and out of clinic. And thank you for inviting us to see an aspect of that for you, Jeff. It takes a team, and we've got a wonderful team that is able to deliver this care and do the steps and organization to do these complex procedures and make sure that everything is done as safe as possible.
It's so important, the emotional aspect of this, and what we consistently hear from patients who have such a good bond with their doctors like you, And the Barnthouse is that they say you treated them like people. Just you saw the humanity in them and their world outside of those medical walls. We are getting a lot of community questions right now, so I just want to kick things off. First, I'm going to read some that came to me via email. Sal would like to know, and you touched on this a little bit as a cardiologist, what specific tracking features do you recommend on a smartwatch? You said the EKG.
So the heart rate tracking is kind of the basis. And then having EKG tracking is super helpful for somebody that has intermittent symptoms or a history of heart problems, just so we can correlate with what the heart rate is detected is what the actual rhythm is at that time as well.
Lynn Painter has a question on Facebook, and keep those questions coming on our Facebook feed or our YouTube feed right now because we're asking them live. Lynn would like to know, do all ERs automatically check for smartwatches now?
Not necessarily. I think it's important for patients to, inform their providers that they have a smartwatch and maybe they were wearing it at the time of an event so that can be reviewed. And usually the phone is necessary to go with it because that's where the actual tracings are stored, is within the phone. And so just making your provider aware is really helpful when something like this happens.
Kim would like to know, is a Fitbit the same as a smartwatch for these purposes?
Many of the Fitbit models do include smartwatch features, including heart rate monitoring and I believe ECG monitoring as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question for Jeff from Susan. Jeff, Susan wants to know, do you still use your Peloton or did that scare you? It would scare me off getting on the exercise bike.
No, I still use it. I get back on it. I don't know. I'm kind of a competitor, and so when Dr. Sheldon gave me the all clear, that was really the first thing I actually did was go home and jump back on it. So yeah, I still do it.
Did that make Jill nervous?
Oh yeah,
I would have been.
She was.
I would not want you on it again.
No, yeah, she was down there, and as the video stated, she walked away. I asked her to get a water, and she was gone for 20 seconds, running up the stairs to our refrigerator to come back down, and that was really the only time in the whole day that I was riding that she wasn't around, and that's unfortunately when I fell off the bike. But now that I've gotten the all clear and everything's back to normal, I guess I can use that and have no problems. So yeah, riding it still.
Marie has a question for Dr. Sheldon. Can you explain again the difference between Afib and A-flutter?
Yes. So atrial fibrillation, everything is chaotic within these top chambers of the heart.
Okay.
Versus atrial flutter being a circuit that's happening within the right atrium of the heart is the most common type of atrial flutter. So it's more organized and not as chaotic as atrial fibrillation.
Which one is the scarier one to have?
Both of them can be scary in their own way. Atrial flutter is more easily treatable with ablation with much higher success rate and freedom from that atrial flutter in the future. But at the same time, atrial fibrillation is a big problem too. So I think it depends on what the heart rate is in the abnormal rhythm and what the underlying heart disease is and which one's scarier.
Rita has a question. She would like to know, how does a smartwatch help you if you already have AFib?
Yes, so it's helpful for me in patients that have atrial fibrillation is surveillance. So we ask patients that we do an ablation on or start medications on. We want to know how we're doing at treating the atrial fibrillation because we do know it's a chronic disease, and unlike some of the conditions that we treat and they're cured and people are doing great and don't need to follow up, atrial fibrillation is potentially there forever. And so we know it's progressive too. So if people start having episodes of atrial fibrillation, the more they have, the longer it typically lasts and the harder it is to treat with lower success rates in the future. So catching somebody like Jeff early on in the disease is helpful. So when patients are on treatment for atrial fibrillation, getting back to the original question, I like to use a smartwatch or some other form of monitoring to detect recurrences of atrial fibrillation early on.
But a smartwatch is a tool. I mean, this is just so interesting. This smartwatch that anyone can have is a great tool for you as an expert at the top of your field.
It is, yes.
That's so cool.
Yep. So there's multiple different types of monitoring. The least robust would be just monitoring based on symptoms, because sometimes people after treatment don't have symptoms with recurrences. Number two would be just checking their pulse and feeling the rate and regularity of the pulse, and that can be done manually or with a blood pressure cuff or a pulse oximeter on someone's finger. But then having heart rate data from a watch is a little more robust than that, and having EKG data from a watch is even better than that.
Question from Jim, and this one is for Jeff. Jim wants to know, what kind of pain, if any, were you in after the cardiac ablation? I mean, it's wild to think of something going up through your leg into your heart.
Yeah, so my leg was actually the sorest part of me. My chest was maybe sore for a day or so, but it really wasn't all that bad. My legs were pretty bruised up, not too long, a couple days. So, but within a week, I felt like basically myself. So nothing too terrible, but I would definitely say probably the insertion site was where I was the most sore.
How soon until you were able to get back to normal and start exercising again?
I think it was a couple weeks. I think I had a follow-up with Dr. Sheldon maybe 3 or 4 weeks after the initial procedure,
Okay.
and I think at that point he kind of gave me the all clear.
That's not bad. A few weeks
No,
isn't bad.
not at all. No, yeah, not at all.
Catherine has a follow-up to that. Catherine wants to know, do you have any activity limitations now?
Nope, not at all. Yeah.
That's remarkable.
And
And
my kids definitely make sure that I know that I don't have any limitations either.
you're a human jungle gym to them.
I know, yeah, it's fun.
So
though.
fun to see. That's
Yeah.
just so great. We're getting a lot of questions, and I think you answered Bruce's question about how much of a role do things like fitness trackers play in patient care nowadays, and you say quite a bit when it comes to monitoring. Marie has a question. Dr. Sheldon, do you wear a smartwatch? I think I see one on your wrist. And what do you look for in a smartwatch?
Yeah,
'Cause you're an
so
active guy.
I wear an Apple smartwatch, and I don't necessarily check EKGs on it routinely, but I do have the heart rate tracking features on, and occasionally I demonstrate to my patients how to obtain an EKG from the smartwatch.
So cool.
It's been really helpful for me. It kind of tracks my activity and number of steps I do a day and what activities I do at home and exercise and things like that. So it's nice to have that information.
And we don't have any stake, this show, in smartwatch apparel, but this is just so interesting that these are things that doctors recommend. Would you recommend to any patient, like, should I get one, any kind? I mean, is this beneficial for everyone to have?
So it can definitely be beneficial for a subset of patients, but there are also people that worry about their heart a lot of the time too.
Right.
And you don't want to have excess worry, because then sometimes stress makes the heart conditions worse and everything too. So I think it depends on individual characteristics and what the condition is and how important the surveillance is for that particular patient.
Joellen has a question, and I'm not sure how much, Joellen, that the doctor can talk to this, but she wants to know about devices that are advertised on television for under $100. You just place 2 fingers on it. I suppose there are all sorts of knockoff versions and such. Any feelings on that?
So this one that's most commonly advertised is called the ENCORE cardia monitor.
Okay.
And it's a type of monitor that basically is a standalone device that sends an acoustic or sound-related signal to a smartphone and converts the electrical signal to sound, which is then converted to an EKG on a smartwatch. And it does a great job, actually.
Oh, okay.
So it gets an accurate EKG. It's not for continuous monitoring, because no one wants to run around holding their fingers on this little device all the time.
It's not convenient.
But at the same time, it does give us helpful information. If someone has symptoms, we can see what's going on electrically at that time.
So none of these would replace the care of a doctor and follow-ups and checkups, but they're great tools to add to this. Jim has another question, wants to know, I'll direct this to you, doctor, what would have happened to Jeff had he not had his smartwatch on? What would his course of treatment been?
Yes, the biggest help that these detection devices provide is earlier diagnosis. And earlier diagnosis facilitates less progression of disease and gives opportunity for better outcomes for treatment. And the goal with treatment is, number one, obviously prevent these bad outcomes like a stroke or something from happening.
Right.
But most importantly as well, improving quality of life and letting somebody like Jeff live his life and not be always worried about abnormal rhythms and not being able to exercise or play with the kids or other things that are super important to him.
It's super important to those kids too.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff, we really had to wrangle you away from them just for the brief moment that we were in your house, but they're just delightful, and you can just feel the love in your house. I want to get to some final thoughts, and Jeff, I want to start with you, because now you're back with Dr. Sheldon, and luckily you've made it through and you're sharing things on the other side. What would be your final thoughts for people who are watching, and what would you like to say to Dr. Sheldon?
Yeah, well, first for people watching, don't ignore symptoms, don't ignore signs. That was probably, we could have caught this on me even earlier than we did. Fortunately, it looks like everything's turning out fine and okay. But if you do have, shortness of breath or dizziness like I was having, don't just chalk that up to, being out of shape or whatever the case would be. Definitely get those things checked out. And then to Dr. Sheldon, just thank you for everything you've done for my family and myself. The way that you walked us through everything made it very comforting for us. We knew exactly how the plan was going to be set up and exactly the steps we would need to take. And then the follow-up that we've had since then and the times we've been able to interact, it's always been very, very positive and kept me very much comforted to know that we've got a really good team and headed up by you.
Dr. Sheldon, what about you? Final thoughts?
Oh, just very sweet. And I just want to thank Jeff, obviously, for sharing his story. It takes a lot of courage to get on something like this and share your story with so many people. And I think this can have a tremendous impact for people, just to make these conditions relatable and help people know there's hope and there's good treatment options.
And so special. Again, I can't stress enough, just as regular people, I don't know that doctors always understand the impact that you have on our lives when there's that bedside manner where we feel seen, like individuals like Jeff and his wife are saying, that does so much for the healing process. And that's really a gift. So yeah, we all appreciate doctors like you so much. I want to share something else. One of the great things about working here at the University of Kansas Health System is getting to know our healthcare workers behind the mask, like what makes them tick in real life. And for you, Dr. Sheldon, boy, you've got a lot of skills. You not only talk the talk, but you walk the walk in every sense of the word when it comes to fitness. That fitness tracker on his wrist gets a workout. Take a look at some of the pictures that Dr. Sheldon sent us. You are a true outdoorsman. Okay, I'm just going to run down a list. This is not an exhaustive list. He runs mountain bikes, trail runs, regularly goes paddle boarding and alpine touring. That's when you climb the mountain in your skis?
Yeah.
So you don't take the lift up. You literally put on skis and then decide you're going to climb a mountain?
I take the lift some of the times, but some of the times it's fun to earn every turn and climb up on your skis.
He climbs a mountain in his skis. Let that sink in. And he also does some sort of stand-up paddling. And he does all this, by the way, not alone. He does it with his wife, Kate, and their 3 daughters, Flora, Claire, and Olivia. How old are your daughters? Do they do everything?
Kelly Kate is my wife's name. She actually goes by the double name too.
Okay,
but
okay.
Yes. But yeah, they all love to do outdoor activities.
How old are your daughters?
So 8, 4, and 2.
Do they do this alpine touring?
No, they do not do that. Our oldest and our middle child go regular skiing, downhill skiing.
Wow.
But no, it's nice to be able to share the outdoors with my family.
Oh, it's great.
And my wife is very good at doing all these outdoor activities and just fun to be able to enjoy that with her.
Well, that probably is also what translates when you're taking care of Jeff and his whole family and Jill and their kids. You're taking care of the whole family because you see your family in their family.
That's true, yeah.
Is there anything you don't do outside of work? Like if you were
I don't necessarily do all these things well either, just to clarify, but I enjoy doing these activities regardless, but I don't play hockey.
Okay,
Yes.
He doesn't play hockey. So we'll do like a short list of what Dr. Sheldon doesn't do. You do want to do a triathlon though, you said that's on your bucket list?
It would be nice. If I had time in the future, I would love to do a triathlon. I enjoy swimming and biking and running, but to put it all together to do one of these races would be interesting.
I'm sure you'll do well. I feel like you're going to do it, and we want pictures. By the way, do you golf?
I do not golf.
Okay, well, you might want to take it up because we have an amazing event to tell everybody about. It's a golf tournament with heart. It's called Golfology for Cardiology, as in 4. It's September 19th at Shadow Glen, the golf club in Olathe. So start practicing your swing now. You are all invited to register. Use the QR code on your screen. This tournament is so special because it raises money to help with cardiac services right here at the health system. So if you or someone you love comes here to the University of Kansas Health System for cardiac care, this money will directly go to that.
All of the effort and all of the energy that gets put into this preeminent golf tournament has benefited countless patients and families.
That is our Vice President of Cardiac Care Services, Barbara MacArthur. She is dynamite. Love Barb. This tournament goes to all sorts of places, and the money goes to all sorts of areas, helping with everything from nurse navigators, which will help you navigate your whole entire medical journey from start to finish. And they'll also help you just with basic care and accessing all the new tools and things we have here at the health system through your health journey. Thank you so much for being with us today. Next week on All Things Heart.
It really lies on the mom to do it because nobody else can.
Talking about breastfeeding, it can be one of the most beautiful experiences for any new mom, or it can be one of the most stressful, and the stakes are high. So we're breaking down a new study that shows a link between breastfeeding and heart health and the other factors that doctors and nurses say you need to consider. That's next Thursday morning at 10 a.m. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. See you next week. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for this Best of All Things Heart. We love sharing these important stories with all of you. So remember, you can always email us at allthingsheart@kumc.edu, or you can reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. We will be back with live shows focused on all things heart every Thursday morning starting September 8th. Go out and make it a great day.